Tonight on Wtiu Reports, in the wake of the death of a man being booked into the Monroe County Jail, questions about what happened and if a supposed non-lethal weapon is actually non-lethal. A doctor takes on the hospital and says the medical facility that's accusing him of hurting a nonprofit wants to drive him out of business. And we speak with a former network television commentator about the race for president. Ken Bodie on Kerry, Bush, and the 2004 race. Good evening and welcome to WTIU Reports. I'm Chuck Carney. For many law enforcement agencies, it's seen as a way to save lives. Without another option to subdue an out-of-control suspect or inmate, firing a gun is an unfortunate alternative. Local police agencies have turned to the powerful yet supposedly non-lethal taser. The taser provides a low amperage shock to the person on the receiving end, either by using probes fired from the taser from up to 21 feet away or as a traditional stun gun when the officer can touch the suspect. The shock is designed to temporarily render a person incapable of moving. Amnesty International says there's not enough testing to be sure the weapons are safe. There are around 30 cases over the last few years involving deaths after the use of a taser. Amnesty's Midwest director says the tasers are like sticking a finger in an electrical outlet. It won't always kill you, but it can. Last week, a lawsuit filed in federal court alleged a case where the taser did kill. The family of Bedford resident James L. Borden Sr. filed a civil rights claim against correctional officers in Lawrence and Monroe counties. Borden died last November, becoming unconscious after being tasered a third time while in custody. As the case enters the legal system, Taser is a growing company. Its weapons are gaining more use, and the family of James Borden is growing tired of gaining no answers for all of their questions. The timing is a bit unfortunate, but the decision came long ago. This month, Bedford police officers began using the latest taser technology on the streets. The chief sought another way for officers to deal with potentially dangerous situations.
We have less lethal options now when we're making arrests. We have mace, we have nightsticks that the officers carry, but both of those items require that you be on top of the subject when you use the tool. We also have less lethal with our shotguns to where we use beanbag rounds, but it's not really practical for an officer to be responding to a call and carrying a shotgun.
The Taser X26 is a weapon that can be used from up to 21 feet away. It shoots darts connected by wire to the weapon. For 5 seconds, it transmits 50,000 volts into a subject.
It just messes you up. To really put it in real common terms, it messes you up physically to the point that you can't make your body do what you want it to do. It's an electronic disruption is what it is, and that's the way it's designed, that it disrupts the nervous system, the motor sensory system. It disrupts all of that for a few seconds to where your brain can't send signals to the rest of your body.
Electricians say it's the amps that can kill, and the X26 transmits only 0.004. The instrument is not supposed to affect heart rhythm. Bedford is one of more than 2,500 police agencies using the weapon. The Taser company is becoming big business. Based in Arizona, it's bought out some of its competitors, and its recent success has resulted in a stock split for public investors. That's a solid performance for a company only publicly traded since 2000.
Let's go, move in. Hit him with the taser.
This promotional video provided by the company shows examples of the taser in use, making clear the point that however short the 5-second shock is, it isn't pleasant. And it is touted as a way to bring a suspect under control in the field or an inmate under control in the jail. Bedford police trainers and Taser International say the weapon has never caused a single death. Technically, that's true. While there are numerous cases across the country where an inmate or suspect has died after a taser application, in nearly all cases, the coroner has determined illegal drugs in the system caused the death. But never has a cause of death pointed directly to the taser. The company has issued several public statements in the last 2 years regarding the controversial cases, blaming the media for jumping to conclusions in many cases. A memo from the company's CEO issued 2 years ago toes the company line explicitly, stating there has never been a death caused by a taser. However, the document also hedges its bets. At the end, as part of what's called key points for law enforcement in dealing with a situation where a death has occurred following taser use, there is this. Under the guidelines to determine taser's impact on situations is this question. Did the fatality occur during or immediately within seconds after the taser application? If no, the taser could not possibly have caused a death. If yes, this does not mean the taser was a cause of death, but it cannot be ruled out. James Borden had a long list of drugs possibly in his system when Monroe County Jail officials began to book him in on November 6th, but none of them apparently illegal. Borden was a Navy veteran whose life had spiraled downward into mental illness and alcohol abuse. Last November, Monroe County ordered a warrant because of a probation violation stemming from a DUI conviction. According to testimony from officers present, after Lawrence County Police brought Borden to the Monroe County Jail, he continued kicking at officers and was uncooperative. An officer tasered him inside the patrol car once it entered the Sally Port. Then tasered him again in the buttocks when he wouldn't cooperate outside the car. The same officer tasered him a third time, the second shot in the buttocks, as Borden lay on the ground. Borden began turning blue. On-site medical staff tried to revive him. After 20 minutes, he was taken to Bloomington Hospital. He was dead on arrival.
Now, is it easier to pull a trigger on an electronic gizmo than to exert manpower?
Borden's brother says no matter how non-lethal the weapon may be considered, he says the conditions were right for a fatal circumstance. Coroner Dave Toomey's report indicated an enlarged heart and electrical shock as causes of death.
To me, that's playing a game of Russian roulette, just like with my brother. I mean, maybe they'd done this in the past, and maybe nothing had happened. But now all of a sudden, it's happened.
Borden questions the need for the taser at all. He says the booking area was a familiar place for his brother. He'd been in jail many times before. He says his brother was not a violent person. A videotape of the death does exist. The jail won't release it because of pending litigation. One activist who's been looking into the case has seen it.
One of the things you can see is that he has his hands handcuffed behind his back the whole time. And another thing that you can't see is that any time, there's never any position, no time during this tape does it seem that he moves in any way that's disorderly or poses a threat to anyone. You can't see him do anything that would be taken as a threat to anyone that I can see.
And there is much question surrounding why Borden headed to the jail in the first place. A document from Dunn Memorial Hospital seems to confirm the family's concern about erratic behavior Borden exhibited earlier in the day. It states EMS advised law enforcement of the need for medical care. Police stated he was under arrest. Steve Borden says a female corrections officer told him that his brother was so weak when they came to pick him up that she had to put on his pants, socks, and shirt.
How does a man go from a 120-pound woman has to dress you to 40 minutes later you're in handcuffs and in a holding bay and 4 officers there and they got to taser you?
And that's just one of many questions Borden has about the case. He says last week's federal lawsuit filing is for 2 reasons: to make sure such a situation doesn't occur again and to get some answers. He still hasn't seen the videotape from the Sally Port, despite his lawyer's formal request. Had someone provided straightforward information at the start, he says his family could have gone on.
You just got that open spot.
And it'll stay that way until you get some answers, I take it.
Yep.
Monroe County Sheriff Steve Sharp agreed to an interview regarding taser use at the jail, but had to cancel on the advice of county attorneys. He did tell us that the jail has used tasers for about 2 years. The model Monroe County uses is the M26, slightly older and heavier than the new X26. Adding some mystery to the circumstances surrounding the order to bring Borden to jail rather than take him to a hospital is this. Mark Haggerty has requested a copy of the probable cause hearing conducted by telephone, the hearing that resulted in Borden's pickup last November. According to a letter filed in court documents by Monroe County Judge Elizabeth Mann, no one can find the tape recording of that proceeding. Still to come on the program, our conversation segment. Tonight, former Washington Week host Ken Bodie speaks presidential politics with us about Kerry's campaign after Wisconsin and Bush's re-election prospects and what the heck happened to Howard Dean. First, the fight over the so-called specialty hospital in Bloomington. The two sides had a public airing last week before the City Council. On one side, a private doctor representing a group of physicians who want to open a small inpatient facility. On the other side, the not-for-profit Bloomington Hospital, which says the new facility would erode its ability to provide community service. As the fight moves towards a vote, we visit with the two sides as they make their case for and against the competition.
A lot of these patients that used to require open surgery.
The doctor heading the group behind the new facility says he's simply responding to market demands. Consumers used to the convenience of small outpatient clinics now expect the same for surgery requiring an overnight stay.
So what we envision is to put an efficient, very small in scope, compact facility for these surgical procedures.
Bloomington Hospital leaders say the doctor is simply conducting a money grab. By selecting particular procedures, not others, the hospital maintains Tuari can pick the most lucrative procedures.
I would again emphasize the fact that at the federal government level, they put an 18-month moratorium on the development of these for-profit facilities with physician investment. And they've done that because of this very concern of the impact these are having upon community-based hospitals and the charitable mission that they have. So again, it is not the free enterprise at its best.
The hospital's chief of staff says it's a matter of future investment. While the for-profit drains a revenue stream out of a finite healthcare dollar in the area, the hospital must continue with an emergency room, something a for-profit can choose not to have. And as the ER continues, it must also continue providing for those who can't pay. The overall effect, he says, is that general care suffers.
But will we have these other technologies available for the entire community? And I think there's a real question that we would not be able to do that if a for-profit hospital that specifically, at least in the proposal that as I've read it, says we don't want an emergency department, we don't want extended care, we don't want an ambulance service, all those things that are loss leaders, they decide they don't want to have, and all of those responsibilities are shunted only to the community hospital.
And Bloomington Hospital wants to stop for-profit inpatients before they begin a large-scale operation. Hospital executives say Tuari's 30-bed facility is the basis for what could eventually become a full-fledged for-profit hospital. Bloomington Hospital says the City Council must protect the nonprofit provider's turf.
Another C-arm and another bed.
Tuari maintains the hospital is constantly competing with him, and it wants to maintain a monopoly.
But I can guarantee you, somebody somewhere near this town is going to build it. And Bloomington Hospital should welcome that little competition because it'll probably make them better. It really will. And time will tell after this thing is built. 5 years from now, we'll look back and we'll say, hey, this was a good thing.
The City Council's final vote on the matter could come as early as Wednesday. What's the deal is still to come. Tonight, the place on the IU campus for losers. You won't believe what we found. First, our report's conversation. Another Democratic primary, another John Kerry win. After Tuesday's Wisconsin victory, is there anything to stop the Massachusetts senator from taking the Democratic nomination? Is there anything a Massachusetts senator can do to win the South? And can any Democrat beat President Bush in November? We discuss the matter with former Washington Week host and longtime political commentator Ken Bodie in tonight's WTIU Reports conversation.
You've seen both parties try to co-opt the other's strengths.
I'm so very proud of the fact that I'm from Indiana.
I have to make sure that I put them in the right position.
I really don't like to be recognized in restaurants or movies.
We're about to hit Super Tuesday on the Democratic primaries. Is there any way that John Kerry is not the nominee at this point?
Well, you certainly can think that if Edwards has enough money to compete broadly on those big primary days, and now that he has essentially got Kerry one-on-one, he proves to be as strong a finisher as he's given indication that he might be. Who knows? This has been a strange election year. I mean, if you look back, Joe Lieberman's been the front runner, John Kerry's been the front runner, Howard Dean has been the front runner.
Clark was even briefly.
Clark was briefly, Gephardt was supposed to be strong, and most of those guys are just debris on the trail now.
How do you explain the Howard Dean fall? I mean, this is like the Phillies in the '64 pennant race. I mean, this is a huge fall for them.
Well, I think a couple things need to be mentioned. One is that scream out in Iowa, the Dean scream, was one of the biggest journalism overemphasis that I've ever seen in presidential politics. I saw it the first time and I thought to myself, well, he's rousing his people. And then I discovered that he's got a microphone in his face there that is directly wired to all the mult boxes that the press has got, but the audience can't hear anything. It's not an amplification microphone.
In other words, he's trying to reach the back of the room.
Exactly right. And 633 times that was replayed. They counted, went back and counted. That's number one. Number two, he's going to get credit for making a bad bet. What he bet was, in spending all that money he had, was that after Iowa, if you did put all the money around and you won Iowa and then won New Hampshire, it would be over almost instantly. That would have been it. And it would have been, too. It wasn't a bad bet. His problem is he didn't win Iowa. Mm-hmm. And I think the problem out there was that he never turned the corner with his message. He had those people who were angry because they thought Bush was an illegitimate president. He had those people because he was the guy who stood up on the war in Iraq. And he had those people who wanted more spine out of the Democratic leadership, who went over and stood with Bush in the Rose Garden when that resolution was passed. He had those people. He didn't turn the corner and get the people who were more worried about health care and jobs. And he actually, I think, fell down a little bit when most of the rest of the candidates pretty much stole the first part of his message. So who knows? There'll be a conventional wisdom on Dean. That's my stab at it.
You mentioned the coverage of the scream, which will be infamous in political history. But what is your take on the coverage of the primaries so far, in that a lot of the emphasis has been on electability, and everybody every 4 years says, well, the press talks about the horse race. They don't talk about the issues. Has there been too much emphasis on electability in that it may have impacted the race? From Dean's standpoint, it basically may have taken him in part out of the race.
Something always does. And electability in this case, if the Democrats are as angry, and I keep hearing from all over the country, people who tell me, a fellow in Nevada called me the other day and he said, I didn't believe this business about the Democrats being angry at Bush, but I went to 2 caucuses in Nevada, and he said they had 4 and 5 times as many people turning out for these caucuses than turned out in 2000. And he said, these people are angry. Mm-hmm. So I think electability is important. People have decided, and I have many friends who've said, my candidate is Dean, but I'm going to take anybody who can beat Bush. Or my candidate is Gephardt, but I'll take anybody who can beat Bush. There's a lot of that going around this year.
Is it possible for a Massachusetts senator to win any state in the South?
Well, that's going to be an interesting thing. Of course, I remember Michael Dukakis, sitting with Michael Dukakis on an airplane, and he telling me he had a 50-state strategy when I knew that he was pulling his people out of Florida. So the Democrats will have to say they're trying for the South. But in fact, how they pick, the first interesting thing will be the vice presidential pick. And that will be a sign of whether they're really going to make an effort at the South or not.
And you've written this week about the vice presidential pick, and one of the things that's interesting about what you said is that Evan Bayh will deny that he is interested in being the vice president, and yet he may be a logical pick and may end up being the VP.
That's exactly right. I think Evan Bayh has very strong assets. He's got first of all, he's young. He's got a Fabulous family. He looks great, and the family looks great, just the way Gore complimented the Clintons back in 2000. He's been a governor. He wins hands down as a Democrat in a largely Republican state. Can't be beaten here. He can run for both Senate and Vice President at the same time. And the Midwest can be considered the battleground. You have a whole series of states out here, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, Indiana, and Missouri, all of which are hemorrhaging jobs. And jobs is going to have to be part of the main message of the Democrats. Who better than Evan Bayh, who was governor of this state, knows the jobs problem out here. If Kerry were to pick Evan Bayh and give him a bus ticket to just those states and let him carry the message on jobs and said, Evan, that's just the way Spiro Agnew's job was to cut off the Democrats at the knees, your job is to go out there and carry the message on hemorrhaging jobs, blue-collar jobs, middle-class jobs, white-collar jobs.
Is it possible, though, that, and Indiana is not a crucial state for the Republicans, I don't think, but is it possible for an Evan Bayh portion of the Democratic ticket to swing the state for the Democrats?
You know, who knows for sure. If you talk to the Republicans in the state, they say no, of course not. But at the moment, there's an assumption that Bush will win the state, Bayh will win the state, and governor is up for grabs in Indiana. If you put Bayh on the national ticket as well, certainly it would make some difference, but who knows how much at this point.
Bodie has returned to DePauw as the Pulliam Distinguished Visiting Professor of Journalism after a stint as Dean of the Northwestern Journalism School. His op-ed pieces appear regularly in the Indianapolis Star. Finally tonight, we turn from politics to consider our monthly feature regarding things we wonder about. We take you to a place you may not know exists, and a place that you may not know has some of your stuff. For the entire IU Bloomington campus, there is one place that collects everything that someone else forgets to collect. Tonight, a real find. We ask, what's the deal?
How long ago did you lose it?
If you've lost it, this is the person to see. What is misplaced at IU often finds a place here, with Darla Munger, who admits when taking the job 2.5 years ago, she didn't know exactly what she'd find among the lost.
I think the biggest thing is I didn't think it would be quite this big.
On a daily basis, folks from across campus peek in her door, tucked in the bottom of Ballantyne Hall, to see what she may find.
So I would try that. Okay.
This is only from last fall, right?
Yes.
Starting last fall.
Right.
Each university year, the room starts with bare shelves. Now, not even midway through the spring semester, it's packed to the ceiling. Clothing of all types gets sorted by description. And this is labeled odd hats. Are these truly odd?
Well, they're a little different than the typical knit hats, and
That's odd. Ah,
I like that one.
it's a good hat.
I like that hat.
Here, cell phones roam no more. The books form a small library of various languages. So, as you would expect, Hoosiers are losing basketballs left and right.
They are.
There are a lot of turnovers
Evidently.
among
Yes.
Hoosiers.
I think a lot.
Realistically, is somebody going to claim that?
No.
So,
Especially
but you have
in
to
those-
hang on to it in case
I do,
somebody comes in here and says, "I'm looking for speed stick."
I say, yes, I have it right here.
And apart from the easily recognizable, there are other items. What is this?
I haven't a clue, but it appeared on my doorstep. So some things I cannot even put a title on. I don't know what it is.
And among the things that she definitely can define, she's found some surprises.
I think a walking cane for a blind man, I would think they would certainly miss that one. A wooden leg.
And of the things you'd expect, there are tons of the unclaimed. Countless keys, at least as many gloves, in singles and pairs. And the umbrellas. They reign supreme for those who choose to forget.
I start out with one box, and then it starts getting larger and the boxes start to break down, so then I start separating. So I have one box of just black umbrellas, one box of just solid color umbrellas, and one box of printed and striped umbrellas. And those are just the fold-up type.
And a few things turned in spell serious trouble. A man's wedding ring came from nearby Beck Chapel. He probably needn't bother coming for it.
Yes.
A bride once left a veil, another left without decorations from the facility. But as the name suggests, one person's loss is another's find. If no one picks up an item by May, it goes to charity. For the racks of eyeglasses, that means a donation to third world countries where the frames are desperately needed. And Munger says she gets the benefit of just being the person keeping track of everything turned in. Students have brought cookies. She's made many friends from those who once came looking among the lost. And within the stacks of misplaced property, there's a happy reunion just waiting to happen. This is my bag.
Is it?
I'm not making this up. This is actually my bag.
Is it really?
I have found something that is mine.
That's
the lost
wonderful.
and found system works.
It does work.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That bag, by the way, had my name, but an old address and phone number on the tag. So the lesson from Munger is clearly mark your items, and if you can't find something, check out a room on the bottom floor of Valentine. That's our show for tonight. There's more online. For streaming video of all past WTIU Reports programs, go to our website at wtiu.indiana.edu. There you'll also find links to more information regarding the stories you've seen here tonight, plus information about WTIU News. Comments about this program and other questions, send them to our email address, wtiunews@indiana.edu. We return in March with another WTIU Reports. Good night.